Hello, my dear students and listeners at home. My name is Mrs. Loretta Okpala, a teacher from Social Studies Department, St. Charles College, Onitsha. The topic of the lesson today is drug/substance abuse. But before I go into the details of the topic of the lesson today, here are the basic objectives. At the end of the lesson, students will be able to 1. Define drug abuse. 2. List 2 forms of drug abuse. 3. Write out 2 causes of drug abuse. 4. Outline 2 consequences of drug abuse on individual. And finally, state 2 ways of discouraging drug abuse in our society. Definitions of drug abuse. Drug abuse is the use of drugs without doctor's prescription. The taking of drugs when not medically necessary is also regarded as drug abuse. It can also be defined as the excessive consumption of any drug or substance by any person in such a way that it affects the person's health, his social or economic adjustment. The United Nations Drug Control Program defines drug abuse as the use of drug without doctor's justification. Forms of drug abuse. Forms of drug abuse include self-medication. Self-medication means taking drugs without doctor's prescription. The next form of drug abuse is use of illegal or dangerous drugs such as cocaine, Indian hemp, heroin. This is common with the youth and sometimes elderly people. They take the drugs to feel high. Such drugs make them to commit crime such as kidnapping and robbery and so on. The next form of drug abuse is taking overdose of medically prescribed drugs. Some patients, out of desire to get well quick, take more than the dosage or the dose prescribed by the doctor. Another form of drug abuse is taking underdose of medically prescribed drugs. For example, if a doctor prescribes a drug for you to take it 2 times daily, instead of you to take it 2 times daily, you take it once daily. This is what I mean by taking underdose of medically prescribed drugs. The next form of drug abuse is consumption of expired drug, which is detrimental to health. My dear students, if you want to consume any drug, check the expired date of that drug, because expired drug is detrimental to your health. The next one is consumption of some herbal medicine. Some herbal medicine do not have dosage. No date of expiration or manufacture, and National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, otherwise known as NAFDAC approval. The next form of drug abuse is wrong use of medically prescribed drugs. Some people use drugs for the reason different from what the drugs are meant for. Examples: the use of tranquilizer such as Libra to induce sleep. Careless use of antibiotics drugs as routine. The next form of drug abuse is excessive intake of cola nuts, cigarettes, tobacco, and alcoholic drinks such as beer, wine, and so on. Now, causes of drug abuse. The various reasons why people abuse drugs include: number 1, poverty. Called one name by poverty. Poverty means inability of a person to provide the basic necessities of life, such as food, clothing, and shelter. In Nigeria and the more developing countries, the level of poverty is too high. that many people cannot afford the service of medical practitioners. They therefore resort to patronized quacks, whose services are cheaper but more dangerous. Number 2 is illiteracy/ignorance. Illiteracy makes some people not to appreciate the need for proper medical treatment. Such people are ignorant of vital information concerning drugs, such as National Agency for Drug Administration and Control, otherwise known as NAFDAC number, manufacture, expiration dates, and dosage of drugs. Such people can easily abuse drugs by taking overdose or underdose of medically prescribed drugs. The next one is unemployment. Many unemployed youths turn to drugs as a result of frustration. This is bad because drug abuse tends to complicate their conditions instead of solving them. The next one is lack of parental care. Children who are not properly taken care of by their parents are more prone to drug abuse. Why? Their parents don't take care of them. They fail to teach them the dangers of drug abuse. As a result of that, many of them indulge in drug abuse. So my dear students, never you indulge in drug abuse. The next one is peer influence. Some youths are easily influenced by bad friends who lure them to evil practice like drug abuse. Therefore, my students, avoid bad company because bad company will lead you astray. Bad company may also lure you into evil practices like drug abuse and others. The next one is curiosity or desire to experiment. Some children from stable homes, out of curiosity to take drugs, may turn out to be drug addicts. Who are these drug addicts? Drug addicts are people who are used to drugs. Another cause of drug abuse is the need to feel high. Some people take hard drugs to feel high or to do certain things their conscience will not allow them to do. Such things include kidnapping, armed robbery, and other violent acts. The next cause of drug abuse is quest for extra energy. Some people take drugs so as to get extra energy. For example, some athletes take drugs to acquire extra energy or strength so as to win competitions. Now, we are now in consequences of drug abuse on individual. What are the consequences of drug abuse on individual? One is mental disorder. Drug abuse makes somebody to become mad. If you don't want to become mad, never you indulge in drug abuse. So my dear students, if you indulge in drug abuse, automatically you become mad. Especially if you take these hard drugs like cocaine, marijuana, heroin, and so on. The next consequence of drug abuse is poor attitude to work. For students, it leads to poor performance in school, truancy, and so on. The next one is drug abuse causes health complications, such as damage to the vital organs of the body, like brain, lung, liver, and so on. The next one is it aggravates high blood pressure and diabetes. Other consequences of drug abuse on individual is it causes deformity of the unborn when pregnant women abuse drugs. The next one is victims of drug abuse drop out of school and other meaningful employment. Dear students, if you don't want to drop out of school, never you take drugs, especially these hard drugs. If you don't want to sack yourself in a meaningful employment that you get, never you indulge in drug abuse. The next one is drug abuse leads to drug dependence or drug addiction. What do I mean by drug addiction? Drug addiction is a situation where an individual gets used to drugs that stopping it becomes difficult. Another consequence of drug abuse is it makes people to commit crimes. Such crimes include kidnapping, armed robbery, and so on. Another consequence of drug abuse on individual is that drug abuse leads to death. My dear students, if you don't want to die young, never you indulge in drug abuse. Now, consequences of drug abuse on the nation. Number one is it dent the image of the country. If you indulge in drug abuse and you're Nigerian, you have done the image of Nigeria. You done the image of Nigeria, the noble country Nigeria. Maybe when you are seen abroad, people will look at you as a criminal because you indulge in drug abuse. The next one is drug abuse discourages foreign investors and international relationships or transactions. Another consequence of drug abuse on this nation is that it hinders economic development of a nation. The money a nation like Nigeria will use in developing Nigeria, for example, putting pipe-borne water, putting electricity, building school, construction of roads, construction of bridges, are now used in attending to drug abusers, in fighting drug abuse in the society. The next one is drug abuse promotes violent behavior among youths. Such violent behavior include kidnapping, cultism, and so on. Drug abuse also increases the rate of crime in society. The next one is drug abuse increases the death rate of the nation. In other words, the number of people that will die in a nation will be on increase because they indulge in drug abuse. Ways of discouraging drug abuse. What are the ways of discouraging drug abuse? Number one is choosing good friends. The type of friends or group a person keeps or belongs affects his behavior. Making good friends helps students or youth to stay out of trouble and temptation of committing crimes or taking unwholesome drugs. Number two is forming drug-free clubs. In these drug-free clubs, students are made aware of dangers of drug abuse. The next way of discouraging drug abuse is acquiring coping skills. People should say no to drug abuse. Engage yourself in useful skills so as to avoid drug abuse. Number four is constructive use of time. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. Every individual should engage in useful activities, especially at leisure, to avoid the urge to commit crime. Such activities include religious and sport activities, listening to radio, television, not Nigerian movies that are bad, reading novels, that is to say, good novels, reading your Bibles, and so on and so on. Religious and sports activities is the mind of worries and anxieties. Number five is parental care. Parents should guide and monitor their children's behavior so that they do not keep bad company. Number six is provision of employment opportunity to our youth. When these youths are gainfully employed, it will reduce the way by which they engage themselves in drug abuse. The next one is number seven, which is education. Through education, whether it is formal, that is the one that we get from the school. or informal, the type of education we get from the home. Students are made to be aware of dangers of drug abuse. Now that I'm teaching you social studies and the topic is drug abuse, students will be made to be aware of dangers of this drug abuse, and therefore you should not indulge in drug abuse. Number 8 is public enlightenment. Teachers, government, non-governmental organizations, and mass media, such as television, radio, newspaper, and other media organizations should educate and enlighten the masses, especially those on the dangers of drug abuse. When the youth are sensitized or enlightened on the dangers of drug abuse, these youth will never indulge in drug abuse. And lastly, is legislation. The laws on drug abuse should be fully implemented by the government, without favoritism and punishment meted out to the offenders accordingly. My dear students, I have come to the end of the lesson today, which is drug abuse. Now, evaluation. Answer the following questions. Number 1, define drug abuse. Number 2, list 2 forms of drug abuse. Number 3, write out 2 causes of drug abuse. Number 4, outline 2 consequences of drug abuse on individual. And finally, state 2 ways of discouraging drug abuse in our society. After answering these questions, you text it to my WhatsApp number, which is 08037747966. Thank you for listening, and God bless you. Bye-bye.